In these tough economic times, many young Americans decide to join the National Guard. In exchange for 1 weekend of training a month, they receive basic pay and help with college tuition from the government. But it comes with a price. What happens when a group of friends from a small town in Michigan decide to enlist in the National Guard and then are deployed to Afghanistan is the subject of a new documentary called Where Soldiers Come From. We're joined by the film's director, Heather Courtney. Thanks for being with us, Heather.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, tell us, how did you come about the idea of doing a documentary on this particular group of young men and about this particular subject?
Well, I'm actually from the same town that they're from, so I decided to go back to my hometown. I wanted to do a story about rural America, because I feel like it's not represented that completely in film and television today. So I went back there to do that, and then I met these young guys at a National Guard training, at a monthly training that they had. And one of the main guys, Dominic, told me he had joined right after high school and that he had joined with all of his friends from childhood. And so I thought it'd be really interesting to follow this group of friends. So it started as a coming-of-age story, and then when they found out they're being deployed a year later, it became something else. So
yeah, talk about coming of age, no doubt. Did these young men truly know what they were getting themselves into once they enlisted?
Well, I think, you know, their decision making was very much a very youthful and impulsive decision for a lot of them. A lot of them joined on a whim in a way, and they're from, you know, a town where there's not a lot of resources, and their families cannot pay for them to go to college. And when you're being offered $20,000, it's a big deal, and it's very enticing, and it was going to help them go to college, and it was going to, you know, pay for a lot of things that they couldn't otherwise pay for.
In exchange, though, they spent 9 months working for armored vehicles, working in them, in fact, where they swept the area looking for improvised explosive devices. This is a very dangerous job. How did that affect them? How did that change them?
Right, yeah, they changed a lot. All of them did from it. I mean, I think when they first started, when they first got to Afghanistan, it didn't seem that big a deal, but then every day they started to go out and more IEDs were blowing up around their convoy. And you know, by the end of their time in Afghanistan, you see a significant change in them. They've become very jaded and very weary, and you really see the big change after they get back to the U.S. when they're veterans. That first year they're back, it's become the signature war wound for Afghanistan, traumatic brain injury, and it's a result of repeated concussions that they suffer from repeated bomb blasts, either at right underneath their truck or around their truck. And
we're going to get to that in just a second, but I want to show a clip from the documentary where you can really see how this experience started to affect these young men. Take a look.
So yeah, through all this, all I can think about are the kids. The kids here are unbelievable. They never stop smiling. You play with your hands in a certain way in front of them, and they will try to copy you. They're so broken away from what the world really is that you can see dreams of bigger things almost breaking through them. But at the same time, based on where they are, they know they will be where their elders are. Poor and war-stricken.
Were you surprised at all at how open they were about what they were going through, what they were experiencing?
Sometimes I was, yeah. A lot of times their openness would come through in very unexpected moments. And there's a moment in the film where Bodie, who actually had experienced 10 or 12 bomb blasts and had actually been prevented from going out on any more missions because he had suffered too many concussions, where he really just let it all out, a lot of hatred and a lot of anger. And it was very shocking to see that, but I think they were at a point where they needed to vent, they needed to let it out. And I'd been around them for so many years. By the time I went to Afghanistan, I'd already been filming them for 2 years. But when we left Afghanistan, it was 3, and by the end it was 4. So they were pretty used to me at that point.
How are they today? Because I know you mentioned Bodie and his injuries. The others, they all suffered to an extent, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, they all suffered either TBI, traumatic brain injury related symptoms, or PTSD, or
post-traumatic stress
disorder, or just stress. You know, the stress and anxiety and depression. When you're a soldier for for 9 months and you're under that kind of stress, and you come back and you're thrown back into the civilian world, because they're National Guard, they're normally civilians, they're not active duty military, and they're expected to just go back to their normal life. It's a really difficult process, and there's not a lot of resources out there for National Guard and Reserve veterans, and so it's very difficult for them to try and just go back to normal life, just, you know, overnight.
Yeah, you have to remember, these are just a bunch of kids who enlisted, trying to pay for college, and now that they're back, and with all that they've suffered, what they've experienced, it's quite a story. Very quickly before I let you go, how did this change you?
Well, I mean, it changed me in that, I mean, I feel like I've very much connected to the place where I came from. When I was growing up, I couldn't wait to get out, but then I went back to make this film, and what really struck me was how much the families and the community there cared about each other, and I think that that is something that has really helped these guys, is that they have a whole community and friends and family that is helping them get through their transition back.
So needed, indeed. Well, thank you so much, Heather, Courtney. We appreciate your time. Where Soldiers Come From premieres Thursday, November 10th on PBS at 9 o'clock, but be sure to check your local listings. And for more information, you can visit the POV website.